Hey crafty friends, this is Chelsea. Today I am going to be using one bundle of products. This is the new Sprigs and Leaves Bundle to create 3 different Christmas cards in honor of Christmas in July. This set has so many fun pieces and I just have so much fun playing with this set. So we have the stamp set, we have the die, we have embossing folder and layering stencils. Now, I love that all of these work together perfectly so you can mix and match. You can see here I've cut it out of sage cardstock. It has that nice little stitching edge along the sides there. This is slimline size, so it cuts out at 3.5 by 8.5 inches, which I think is a really great size because you can use it for slimline cards but also for layouts. Now the layering stencils, we have kind of the base layer here with all of the bigger leaves all together on one stencil. And then on the other layer, we have some details for those larger leaves and then all the smaller leaves. Here's a quick little sample of what this looks like with the embossing folder and the layering stencils and some stamping. Was done really quickly just as I was filming that little intro. Now, the embossing folder is the exact same design, so it lines up perfectly with the stencils, with the die. And on the stamp set, you have the outline for the outside of the leaves, and then you have details for the insides, as well as some little berries and little flowers. Now this is the first bundle like this that Close to My Heart has offered. I think it's brilliant because as someone who loves florals, I can never get enough leaves, whether it's on layouts or on cards. And I just think this is a really neutral pattern that could go with so many different things. As you can see today, I'm going to make Christmas cards out of these. So let's jump into the techniques and get started. This video is a collaboration with the creative design team, and everyone is doing different projects related to Christmas in July. I will link the playlist at the end of this video so you can go see all their beautiful projects. For our first card, I'm going to start off with the die cut from white glitter paper. It's really subtle but very nice and sparkly in person. Then I have a piece of 3.5 by 8.5 white daisy cardstock that's been put through the embossing folder, and then a slimline card base, which is the exact same size. I have mist and sage ink, and those are the colors I'm going to be using for all of my cards today, as well as I have the stencils and some blending brushes. Now I love using the stencils with the embossing folder, not only because it gives it beautiful dimension, but it's super easy to line it up because you can just kind of nestle it in there and it finds the right place where it needs to be. I'm going to washi tape this down and actually throw a little bit of my ATG adhesive under there so that it's not sliding all over my all-purpose mat. Now for the ink blending, I'm going to go pretty quickly, but I am just starting off with sage ink. And I want some variation in my blending. I'm not going to make it a solid color. It's going to be darker kind of in the center of my leaves and lighter towards the edges. And you can see how it's not completely even. That's totally on purpose. And then I'm just putting on my second one and lining it up. Again, pretty easy to line it up with that embossed panel. Now I'm using mist ink with this second stencil, and I love how this just makes the whole design pop, really adds some nice dimension to those leaves with the darker color. I really like how the blending brushes work with these inks through the stencils, but you could also try an ink blending tool if you wanted a heavier application. So there you go, there's a look at what it looks like. I'm going to be putting my die cut panel over top, and you do lose a little bit of the dimension that you get from the embossing, but that's okay. I really wanted this sparkly layer over top, and what I decided to do to give it a little bit more dimension is to cut out 3 layers from white daisy cardstock, and I'm just going to use my Tombow glue and glue all these layers together. So the trick for this is to use really small dots of glue and to try and work pretty quickly. I do have this sped up, but I did try and work fairly quickly because there's a lot of little nooks and crannies to add glue to, but I didn't want my glue to dry on me by the time I got all the way around the whole design. Now, do you need to do this step? Do you need to layer all these pieces together? Definitely not. I was just having so much fun playing and testing things out and seeing what different combinations of these products look like when layered together. And so I am just testing things out. I do love the dimension that you get from stacking multiple die cuts on top of each other. And this design is pretty intricate, so it would be difficult to use foam tape or something like that. Now here is the finished panel. I stuck that onto the embossed panel. You can see the thickness. It will still go through the mail, no problem. And I love the dimension and the sparkle. It's just hard to capture on camera. In person, it's even better. Now, I debated what to do for a sentiment for this. I decided to go with this Joy thin cut. This is a little bit older one you can see here. I cut it out of mist cardstock and I stacked 3 on top of each other. And then I used that stitch circle for the rest of my sentiment. And then I used this new kind of circle design from the Cozy Up Cardmaking Workshop set. I'm going to be using that circle a lot because I really love it. And I cut it out of some Seabrook glitter paper. This was an older set and it had the wishing you to go with Merry Christmas. I just cut the A off and stamped wishing you. So it'll say wishing you joy. And then I am attaching this little wreath design that's cut from the glitter paper with glue dots, just a few glue dots, because when you're sticking things on top of glitter paper, glue dots are definitely your best bet. Then I was going to add glue dots on the back of my stitch circle, but I decided it would make more sense to go around and put it right onto my leaf design because it was hard to tell where exactly the circle was going to end up. So I'm just going to center this right in the middle. And then I'll glue that Joy die cut right on top of that circle. It gives it a good spot to land there. And that is my finished card. So you can see all the dimension and the sparkle. I just love this soft color palette. For our second card, we're going to do another Slimline card, and I brought in the Moxie alphabet. I love this chunky alphabet. It took me a while to jump in and get it, but I'm so glad I did. I think it works great for this when you're going to do like a big statement, sentiment, or do a title on a layout. I stamped this in mist ink onto White Daisy cardstock and then used the coordinating dies to cut it out. I'm going to put my letters down the center of my Slimline card, same measurements, 3.5 by 8.5. And then all those glittery leaves from the white glitter paper that we cut out on the last card, I'm going to use them on this card. So this is going to be a really kind of 2-for-1 sort of idea, and I'm going to use the layering stencils, and I'm going to start just with the initial base layer with all the big leaves. I'm going to put it right in the middle of my card. I'm working right on the card base for this one, and you could do it on a separate panel if you want to, but I'm doing it right on the card base. I'm going to add a super light layer of the sage ink, because essentially this is just to help me place the die cuts in the exact right position and also to help me line up the next stencil. So none of this is really going to be seen. I'm going just heavy enough so that I can see the design myself. It's so light and pretty. And then I'm lining up the second stencil, and this one I'm going to add a little bit more ink, but I'm focusing on those little groupings of like the tiny little leaves. So the die does cut those out, but there was no way I was going to mess with trying to line up the exact glitter leaves in that position, because basically I'm going to glue those glittery leaves over top of these inked leaves, and only those tiny little leaves are going to be the ones that are showing on the final card. Don't worry if that doesn't make a lot of sense. You're going to see it in a second here. I always love that reveal of removing the stencil. It's super satisfying. Now I'm going to go around and just place my leaves. I'm not going to make you watch me glue all of these down. It really doesn't take that long, but I wanted to figure out where they were all going first, make sure they were on the right spot. I do want to say I love that with these leaves they curve in different directions. When you're using them in floral arrangements, they work really nicely. There's little ones, there's bigger ones, some curved left, some curved right. It's perfect. And here we go. Here is the finished look at our super simple card. I love how soft and pretty this is with the glitter of those leaves and then the soft sage inked leaves. For our Mary here, I cut out several of each die cut so that they could be popped up rather than using foam tape. They're a little bit sturdier by stacking the die cuts. I also used some of this white opal liquid pearls to add all those pretty shiny pearls around the design. I did debate whether I wanted to add layers to the actual leaves to make them pop up, but I decided not to. Now onto our final card. I'm going to do a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. I've taken some of this 4-inch masking tape and I have die cut this little wreath design or this little circle design out of the masking paper so that I could perfectly mask the inside. That little wreath design is cut out of mist glitter paper. And now I'm actually going to pull in the stamp because I haven't used that one yet. I wanted to make sure I used all the different pieces of this collection. We're definitely mixing it and matching today because I want to show you some fun ways to combine all these products. I am stamping with sage ink, and actually I'm going to use sage ink for this entire card. Everything that I'm doing on here, as far as all the leaves, this whole background, I'm going to use one ink color, which I know is very strange for me. So basically, I'm taking all the outlines of the different leaves and I'm just trying to fill in this background. Now, right at this point, I was realizing that the ink that was going off the edge, I was going to get it all over the backside of my card when I move my card around. So I decided to put some printer paper under there to save the backside of my card. You may have noticed that I have been rubbing my stamps as I am using them just for the first time because there's usually a little film on them from manufacturing, and if you rub them with onto your skin, that will help take that off and they will transfer the ink better. So once I have my outlines all done, I'm going to grab the layering stencil and I'm going to go ahead with the same ink and just lightly apply it. I'm kind of keeping it heavier towards like the bottom or the inside, leaving the tips of the leaves a little bit lighter. Now, because I created my own pattern with the stamps, I'm having to move the stencil all around to get just the leaves that I want. So I'm masking off using some Post-it notes, some really large ones, and then I'm also going to bring in a little bit of masking tape. For certain leaves, I just needed to do more masking so that I didn't get ink all over the place. It just depends on what part of the stencil you're using. Now, I am just breaking the surface here on how many different ways you can use all of these products. It's just a little sampling. So keep in mind that when you're using these layering stencils, you don't have to just use a single color per layer. You could use multiple shades if you wanted to. Especially on this solid layer, you could add a couple of different ones, especially if you're using smaller blending brushes. With the size I'm using, about one color is all you can do, but there are smaller blending brushes out there. Now I'm using the more detailed layer, and I'm going to have to mask like crazy. So I got all kinds of funky looking masks going off, trying to make sure I just get those particular leaves. And to save myself some time, what I tried to do is do the same leaves all at the same time. So I picked one design and then went around the card and did all the leaves that I had stamped in that design before I rearranged my masks. So I continued to do that until all of the leaves had that second layer, and now I'm using the same ink and I am just blending softly around the whole edge of my card base. It was looking a little bit harsh to me. I wanted to soften it up, so I just did a really light application of ink. And a lot of this next part is going to get cut out because my head was in the way of the camera almost the entire time. I should have had my camera a little closer to the table, I guess, because yeah, my head got in the way. So I just stamped all the detail layers of those leaves. Now you can see it on there. And yeah, my head was in the way, so sorry about that. And now I'm going around with the little berry stamp, and I'm using first and second generation ink to stamp those little berries. I know I've been kind of flying along here to try and keep it quick for you guys, but here is a slow close-up look so you can see all the details of the outline stamps, the layering stencils, the detail stamps, that ink blending around the edge. I love how this turned out. It has so much detail. Now to find the placement of this wreath, because it's not perfectly circular, you kind of have to just rotate it until you find it. I went ahead and stamped a sentiment from a very old set. This is the Frosted Card Making Workshop. Basically, I just looked through my stamps until I found something that I thought fit. And then the Spruced Up Card Making, I used the little pine cones from this one. And this is the only spot where I brought in a different ink. I used Toffee ink to stamp my pine cones and then used the coordinating dies to cut those out. So here are all the little pieces that I'm going to embellish my card with. Some of these I had to cut down to make them shorter. Some of them, they're just the smaller ones. I have 2 cut from White Daisy and 2 cut from Sage. And then I ink blended the base of all of them with Sage ink. So lots of Sage ink going on in here. I also curled some of those little petals. And the top pine cone there is pop dotted. That's the only thing that has dimension on this card. And then I'm adding some of that same white opal liquid pearls, just kind of going around my little arrangement there and adding a little bit of shine. If you don't like the look of pearls, you could also add some sparkles in different sizes. That would look really pretty. Or one of my favorite things that I did in last week's video, mixing pearls and sparkles together. So here is that finished card. The pearls are still wet. If you have problems getting like little Hershey Kiss tops on these, just flick it from the underside to round them out. But isn't that beautiful? I don't know. I rarely ever just use one ink color, but I think I might do it more. I really like how this turned out. And then the glitter of the mist glitter paper on there really brings your attention to that sentiment. So here are the finished cards. We did end up using all 4 items from this bundle, and I love how these cards turned out. A little bit more non-traditional Christmas palette, but you could definitely switch it up and do red and green if you want to. You could switch it up and not even do Christmas. You could add some florals on here where I put the little pine cones. You could add some florals there. That would be perfect. And instead of merry, you could spell happy and add the word birthday at the bottom or something like that. There's lots of options, and honestly, I can't wait to play with this more. I will link all the supplies I used down below, and make sure you go and check out the playlist here with all of the Creative Design Team videos, and I will see you next time. Bye.